Well, I want to thank everyone, the folks in the Academy who invited me here. It should be an aspiration for all of you, if you stay around long enough, that someone will invite you to impart whatever wisdom you think you've accumulated. And I talked to Nicole Wohl, and she asked me to have this as a topic. There's lots of topics that we could have talked about, and I have a few of those at the end in case something bad happens and we have to switch very quickly. But that was a joke. But thank you all, and it's really an honor to be here, and I want to make sure that everyone is understanding that I am so appreciative of all the people here, and this is a great honor for me, and I think I will try to make it as easy as possible on you tonight. And I want to just reflect on a career, and it wouldn't be an education talk if we didn't have objectives. I'm not sure that this is largely going to be a self-indulgent talk and not focusing on, certainly not assessment of these objectives. But I want to, the first one's really the academic one, and we want to, one of the underlying themes of this talk is going to be relating active learning to constructivism, the creation of meaning and active learning. That's like 2 slides. And then, but that's the main educational talk, educational value that you should get out of this. But I also want to aim a lot of this at those of you who are at the beginning or in mid-career in academic medicine or in education. Those of you who are senior folks in education right now really don't need my help, and you might be better served by having them up here. So I'm going to give you a few guiding principles for a relatively successful career in medical education. And then I'm going to apply those principles to some real-life examples and maybe tell you some stories about how I handled things and succeeded. Since I get to talk about what I want to talk about, I'm not going to focus a lot on the failures, but there were many failures over time and learning experiences, as we like to call them. But most importantly, and this again is directed to those folks who are at early and mid-career, is recognizing the value of saying yes. We saw a talk, at least I saw a talk, maybe it was here, maybe it was in a different faculty development venue here at Geisinger, and a senior person was up at the podium talking about the value of saying no and making sure that you say no when it needs to be. But I think that's really directed more towards people who are in the senior level of their career and have the luxury of saying no. All the things, and I've been so lucky in my career and really have had the opportunity to work with some really great people and share in some great successes with them. But none of those things happened because I said no. They always happened because I said yes. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And finally, it says discuss future challenges in medical education at Geisinger, if we have time. But again, as I said, this is mostly a self-indulgent talk, so who knows how long I'm going to talk. I said I was going to set a timer for myself, and I didn't. So, April, you're going to have to give me the hook when it's necessary. So, just for this thing, can I walk away? No? You're pointing us. Do I take this with me? Is that okay? This doesn't do anything? Is that what it is? Okay, good. Just understand. This is an ornament we have. You've been around long enough, you get one of these too, you know. Okay. I want to, this is, I guess, establishing my bona fides, which is in fact the correct pronunciation of that term, of my career and like why I'm qualified to talk about this, because I'm old. And here's my career. I list myself as a scientist from 1982 to 2009 when I gave up my lab, and I really started in graduate school as a scientist in 1980, but I wasn't really a very good scientist until about 82. So I didn't give myself that credit. But I really taught from 1980 when I became a teaching assistant in a pharmacology laboratory all the way up until about 2009 when I gave up my teaching roles to just entirely be a supervisor. And then I've been an administrator for medical education from 2001 until 2025. And by administrator, I mean like assistant dean. I was like a course director and things like that before that. But I wanted to find a photograph of myself in my early career, and the only one I could find was this one. This appeared in the newspaper in the Omaha World Herald when I had an NIH grant that I had written and for underrepresented students, bringing them into scientific careers. And so, if you can believe it, that's me in the middle, pretending to do something in the laboratory for the photographers. But I really would like to point out that there on the left, there's the Avery twins, Nataki and Nanika, who Nanika is an OBGYN right now, and Nataki's a family medicine doc. And there's Michael Johnson behind me. He's an internal medicine doc right now. And there's Lisa Saul over there in the corner. She's also a family medicine doc right now. And so even though I was a scientist at that time, I was very much interested in the education of medical students. And these folks really kind of turned me on to lighting that fire and getting involved. This is the number of students that I've been involved in the education of over time, and it was fun to calculate this. And just due to the intimacy of medicine and the numbers involved, and it's not a lot of physicians in the country relative to the number of people, and if you've taught enough students, that you can have you can have that happy coincidence always happening. And so of the MDs, of the 5,639 medical students that I've taught in my career, one of them's in the room. Kevin Scott, take a bow. There he is. He was just telling me today he didn't do very well in my renal test, but I'm sure that he got over that. So I was a scientist, and a lot of scientists teach medicine or teach in medical schools, at least at that time, in the same way. You go in and you mimic what you saw in undergrad or graduate school, and you go through the material that you have, and maybe you get a little self-indulgent and you focus on your own area too much. The medical students dutifully learn that stuff and then regurgitate it onto exam tests, and then they take step one and move on to the clerkships. Here is my friend Hank Sikowski. He was the clerkship director for medicine at Creighton University when I was an assistant professor. And Hank and I developed a relationship for teaching, and he and I were collaborating on developing a basic science return in the medicine clerkship. And he told me something very interesting, because I thought I was a great teacher. I really was. I know I was. I was fantastic. And I was entertaining, engaging, and the students loved me, except for Kevin, of course. But but I debriefed with him one day, and he told me, we were talking about, I taught heart failure and diuretics and hypertension especially, and things like that. I was a fellow of the Council for High Blood Pressure Research. And I was, hot stuff. I thought I was great and a great teacher. And Hank was telling me that, he had rounds, and the students, my students, he goes, they don't know jack about hypertension. They don't know anything. When they get to the medicine clerkship, they don't know anything. They don't know, what are you talking about? Clonidine? They don't know how that works. And other things, and I thought, well, that's crazy. I taught them myself. I know they know this stuff. They took a test. I tested them on it. They took the boards. They passed the boards, and now they're in the clerkship. What are you talking? And he said, no, they don't know anything. They disavow any knowledge of your teaching. And it was true. They don't know anything. They didn't know anything. And it made me realize that, the lecture-based learning is transient and doesn't really have a long-lasting effect, and is not really a methodology that we should be using. So I had subsequent realizations, and by the way, these slides are very wordy. I know it's against. I wrote a chapter about not doing this, but as you get older, you realize that you need more and more words on the slide to remind you of what you were actually talking about. But my subsequent realizations are medical education was, at that time, designed around the teacher, not around the learner. It was about me. I'm smart, I'm entertaining, I'm the biggest guy in the room. You people are all here to learn from my great prowess in pharmacology, and that clearly was obvious. And then students use exams as an endpoint, and they devise ways of succeeding based on the system. I heard Bruce talking today about how AI has been trained to do the same thing. So when students use AI to help the learning, it says, oh yeah, just do this, and get around here's how you beat a test. And they use the same test-taking strategies that actually we teach some of our students in our own school. And we use a scientific method for advancing knowledge in our research and clinical practice. We're fantastic at that, cutting edge. But when it came to teaching, we just mimicked what we saw in undergrad or graduate school or in medical school or whatever we did, and we just made it up, as we went along. Think about it, 20 years ago, the concept of using objectives for developing a lecture was like crazy. It's like, no, this textbook says diabetes starts here and it ends here. I'm just going to make slides out of that and just talk BS about it while I'm up there. So anyway, I came to this concept why don't we apply the science of learning to our teaching? And my colleague said, because we don't know anything about it and it's stupid. There's no reward in it. There's no benefit and we shouldn't do it. And why do you care? And I think the why do you care question was really the one that was an inflection point for me. Because I do care. I want good doctors. I don't want doctors that just have to look stuff up every time they need to know something, although that's what we're teaching them now. But at that time, I didn't think that. So that created an inflection point. And Hank Sikowski said to me, literally said this. He goes, I think if we started medical school in the third year, it wouldn't make any difference, except that the students have to take the boards. So why don't we make step one the entrance exam for medical school? And I didn't have a good answer for that. And maybe you still don't. But it was something that changed the way that I thought about it and made me care about the outcome. So, and by the way, I'm an amateur photographer, so again, in the self-indulgent aspect of this whole talk, I'm just going to put pictures that I took in here. And this has nothing to do with active learning, but I love this picture. I took it in Dublin this past April with the guy selling books, Samuel Beckett and other things, and he's reading, of course, the G.I. Joe comic. So active learning, I thought, was a remedy for this. And constructivism, I'm not going to get deep into constructivism today, but basically in constructivism, what it says is that knowledge is something that's not passively transmitted to you. It is something that you create in your brain as a result of your experiences. Therefore, a teacher, in order to create knowledge, needs to generate a setting for meaningful experiences. And that creates long-lasting memory. It's really hard to do that in a lecture, which is why I don't have great hopes for the long-lasting memory of this talk for all of you, and I appreciate the irony of this, but it's the format, so we're going to live with it. But it relies on challenging learners. Learners can't just sit there and listen. You have to make them do stuff. And you have to make them a little bit uncomfortable or put them on the spot or in other ways make them be active. And that's the point. Because they create meaningful experiences or you create meaningful experiences, and then they turn that into a meaningful memory. And so, and as I'll say in a minute or two, that this doesn't just go for learning like pharmacology. This goes for life as well. You're going through all of life, and you're experiencing these things, and you're turning them into meaningful memories. For teaching, though, it's a warning here: do not conflate meaningful memories with the truth. And we see plenty of people nowadays in today's political environment that have lots of meaningful memories or meaningful things in their life, and it ain't true. But they're still important to that person, and it creates that milieu in their brain that creates knowledge. And so, I mean, you probably sat in, I probably taught Kevin this, that, the heart's like a pump. And maybe this will come back to you. We said the heart's like a pump, and it's like a water softener in your basement. And the pump, pumps through the pipes, and it comes back to a tank where it's stored, and then goes back. That's all creates a meaningful memory. It ain't true. Your heart's not like a water softener. But it's useful. And the other thing is, and we'll talk about this on the next slide, I think, is that meaningful learning versus meaning in life. As I said, this is how you develop meaning in life as well. You are constantly experiencing things, and your brain is turning that into meaning and valuable knowledge that you use for everyday life. And the interesting thing, and I think I have another, I'm going to re-emphasize it on the next slide, I think, is that lecturers derive their meaningful experiences from lecturing. So if you're trying to change that, you can run into some trouble. So we have two interwoven philosophies, and I promise this will be like the last actual intellectual slide. So what we want to do is accomplish deep learning. And there's a great book, and I wish I remember the name of the author, but it's called Deep Learning. And it's dependent on this instructor creating the setting for meaningful experiences. So we have to do that in some way or other. And our total health curriculum does that. We challenge the students, we give them problems to solve, and we really force them to learn in ways. And of course, clinical rounds and clinical care where learning is happening is similar to that. There's a meaningful experience happening, and the student turns that into knowledge. So for constructivism, information is processed by relating to prior knowledge, because remember, the student has a base of knowledge in their brain already. They have to retrieve that knowledge, get the new information, create a new narrative internally, and put it back, and then retrieve it for later whenever they need it. So for effective teaching, you have to evoke those experiences that are going to generate those types of activities and the perturbance of that internal narrative. So if you just sit there and just talk about, glomerular filtration rate and not really challenge the students maybe to calculate it or to tell you how it's meaningful, you're not going to get any long-lasting learning. And that life satisfaction is dependent on the pursuit of positive, meaningful experiences that enhance a sense of purpose. So if you talk, I can ask any physician in the room, what was the most meaningful experience you ever had in medical school? What's the most powerful learning experience you had? And I guarantee like about 90% of you will tell me about an error you made in a clinical environment where I'm never going to do that again, and bad things happen, and I learned, and I got over it, and we figured it out, and now I know. And now the first thing I do when I have a resident is say, don't do that. But you telling them not to do that is not as powerful as you experiencing whatever you experience. So that's it. Now here's that last thing I said I would come back to, and that's med-ed conflict. So when you try to change a curriculum to say, okay, what I just said hopefully makes sense to everyone, and you can understand that, passive learning, bad, active learning, good. And let's just do active learning now. But remember, that's the med-ed conflict. Lectures provide little opportunity to create meaningful experiences, but lecturers derive a sense of purpose by delivering them. And that was like a very powerful message for me personally, or a realization for me personally. You know, I won a golden apple, and not from Kevin's class, but I won a golden apple, and you know, I felt like, okay, I'm a validated teacher, but really they just liked me a lot because I made jokes and I had, you know, whatever, and I think, you know, and I was engaging, but I didn't really create a sense of purpose in those activities that I was doing. So the next step was to try to get some of those activities in there using some science of learning. You know, I was listening to is Kelsey Savka here? You here, Kelsey? Kelsey, today we had one of our small groups today, and Kelsey at the end, we were talking about faculty development basically, and Kelsey, who used to teach, I think, fourth graders, got up and said, okay, well, here's how you teach. And you know, we're like the least, medical education people are like the least sophisticated teachers. Here's a former, which grade did you teach, Julie? 9th grade science. Wow. Think about that. Think about the talent that takes, you know, compared to teaching a medical student who just wants to know, like, okay, tell me what I need to know so I tell you later what you told me. And as opposed to someone who's going through puberty on top of everything else, trying to make something sense out of science. But anyway, so that's the conflict that you're faced with. So that's the backstory about me and where I came from and why I care about education. And I'm not really that educated in education. It's all self-taught. So whereas someone like Kelsey, who is a classically trained teacher, I mean, I'm more like folk art. I learned by doing. But here are some principles, and this is a retrospective analysis. I wish that I had known some of these things moving forward. It would have made more sense. But how was I lucky? There's a lot of luck in here, by the way. But how was I lucky enough to succeed in an environment that I really didn't know much about? And there's 3 principles here. One is, why not me? The next one is, change is your friend. And then finally, building and maintaining professional relationships, which is probably not such a unobvious thing. But under why not me? So I was just talking to Becky Stout here about her daughter, and who was a setter on a team, and said, well, Penn State needs a setter right now. I'm sorry, am I telling too much here? Am I giving it away? But the point is that Penn State needs a setter. I'm a setter. Why not me? And a lot of my career is this. Why not me? Why, you know, I could do that. But it requires a couple things. First of all, it means confronting your risk aversion, because there's lots of reasons why not you. One of them is I could fail. The other one is I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I never did that job before. I don't even know how to do that job. And the other one is that, well, it might interfere with other things in my career that will be screwing me up and not making me successful. And somebody came here last year and gave a talk about saying no all the time. So that's part of it. The second one is saying yes. So there's a phrase in golf that, you know, you can't make the putt unless you hit it hard enough to reach the hole. And so you got to say yes. You got to, especially early in your career, when people ask you to do stuff, I say yes. And if you're bad at it, and there's 2 things that can happen. One is you can get good at it, or you can stay bad at it and not do that anymore. You know, get fired or whatever. That's why the risk aversion needs to be low. But saying yes got me to where I am today, which is giving a talk in front of a great audience. So, and then finally, as everyone's heard, you know, you fake it till you make it. I have never been hired for a job I was actually qualified for, but I had some confidence by saying yes, and you know, and why not me? And that's been helpful to me. This is n of 1, so take it where, but, and then change is your friend. Things change all the time, and bad circumstances or new circumstances always happen, and you can take advantage of that. And by changing things, you know, like I was looking the other day, it's the runners running a mile, and you know, the positions change, and sometimes you get boxed out, sometimes there's an opportunity, and they take it. And so the changing environment is something that can help you. And so another hackneyed phrase, fortune favors the bold, which was originally uttered by Lucius Cornelius Sulla. I'm sure you all know that too, back in Republican Rome. But really, in an environment of change, that's when you're really susceptible to audacious suggestions, or things where it's like, okay, I'm saying, yeah, I'm willing, and here's this crazy thing I want to do, and why not? And so being that forward-thinking person is very helpful. And also being prepared to adapt. And resiliency is, of course, a great strategy or a great trait to have, and we have folks in the room are here to help you develop that. But one thing I've noticed is that every plan I ever made, like, you know, I'm going to do this, and then by 25 I'm going to be that, and I'm going to do, those plans never materialize. Look back in your lives and think about what you thought was going to happen. Has all of those things happened? I don't know. Except for Jason, did all of your plans materialize? No? Oh, really? Okay. I was thinking the one guy who would have been you. But no. All right. But preparation is the important. It's not planning. It's preparation. So being prepared, being like a facile person, and being a well-rounded athlete that can go into the game and do whatever, that's something that's important. So they're not synonyms. And having a plan is important, drive to thrive, but they're important. But we have to adapt as we're moving along, and I think that's very important as well. And then be an early adopter. So being first is much more valuable than being the best. And that's, I'm speaking to the scientists out in the room, you know that. Being first is always better, because then you'll have the syndrome named after you, or the cycle, or whatever it is. And so being an early adopter puts you in a position of directing things that are in the favor of you developing your own career. And then building and maintaining professional relationships. I'm sure you all know these things. The most important thing is to hang out with smart people, hopefully smarter than yourself. That's really important, and I've been so fortunate. You were already at a college, you know, so there's a lot of smart people around, and learning from them, your colleagues, is hugely important. And then asking for help. We're in a learning environment, so there should be no shame in asking for help. But you know, a lot of times there is, and a lot of times people are hesitant to admit that they don't know, or they don't want, or they can't do, or whatever. And I think that's something that needs to just be ignored and overcome. And then being generous with work credit. It really doesn't matter if you get credit or not. I think the important thing is that things get done, and that new knowledge is there. And you know, I think one thing that I've never done is sit and stewed about, like, oh, well, they didn't recognize me for this or that or whatever, because the satisfaction has to be in here. It's not up on the screen, you know, to see. I mean, it was nice having a picture of me, a much younger picture of me with no beard and stuff on the brochure here. That was great. But I didn't need that. You know, it's really the fact that all of you are here and learning and together, and that's the best part. And then also actively seek out new colleagues. So there's always some new people to meet and learn from, and I think that's hugely important to create a structure for yourself that allows that to happen. So those are the principles. So what are the lessons that I've learned applying those principles over time? And again, I said this is a retrospective study, so it's not like I planned this out. But and that's Coolmanall Beach in Ireland. And I don't know who that person is, but She was very contemplative. So, first lesson, why not me? So here's the story. Here's the event. So Katie Huggett, who, again, hang out with smart people, I hired her out of University of Wisconsin, right out of graduate school, as my director of assessment and evaluation at Creighton. And she and I were putting together a faculty development program. And this book, A Handbook for Medical Teachers, was sort of, it's full of cartoons, and it's every, each chapter can be read, in a duration of the average bowel movement. And so it's a really good book to give away to faculty. And it really is like how to. This is, if you're a novice in medical teaching, this is it. So there's the 4th edition, Nubelin Canon, and illustrations by Zig Capellas. So Katie, I both agreed, we got to get this book and we'll give it out to faculty for free. And so what happened was we couldn't find it. And so finally we called up Kluwer and said, where's this book? We want to order like 20 copies of, and they said, it's out of print. Okay, well, is there a 5th edition? That's the 4th, was there a 5th edition? They said, no, it's done. And it's out of print, and I said, well, okay. So Katie's like, they don't have it anymore. And I said, well, okay. No 5th edition, no 5th edition. I said, tell them we'll do it. And he's like, what? I said, tell them we'll write the 5th edition. And she said, that's crazy, no. So I said, don't. She worked for me, so I said, tell her. So she told them, she said, well, what if we wrote the 5th edition? Would you be okay with that? And they said, oh, well, yeah, we have a thing, a methodology. You send the proposal and we'll look at it. So I said, okay, well, so she said, I'll email you the thing. So they did. And so we wrote the 5th edition of A Handbook for Medical Teachers. There's one problem with this story, though, is that we wrote the book, and I said, let's do authors chapters, and we'll edit it. We'll write some chapters, but we'll get some friends to do this, and we did that, and we completed the book, and so the principles here, why not me? Fortune favors the bold. Hang out with smart people, okay. And what we did was we recruited a bunch of people, and a bunch of people I didn't even know. Like Brian Mavis from Michigan State, I said, hey, Brian, would you write this chapter on assessment? Sure, I'll do that. Who are you? But he did it, and now he knows me, and now we're good, and we're all friends, and so we do the whole thing, and then we send it in. We're waiting here back about like when's this book going to be printed, and Kluwer says, oh, by the way, bad news from the legal department. We found an old folder that when we acquired Kluwer, it was now Springer, and Nubelin Canon said the book dies with them. You can't do it. No handbook 5th edition. And I had drawn 50 new cartoons in this style. I'm like, I spent more on the cartoons than I did on the. So we couldn't do it, but they said, all right, well, we're not opposed to it happening, so we did it. And we had to rewrite it, and we put it through, and it became an introduction to medical teaching. Here's the first thing. You'll see my friend Hank Zukowski on the cover. So I took that picture too. And what happened was that we developed a handy, up-to-date guide. It was career development. We gave it out for free, and it became a hot seller. We sold a lot of copies of it. But the unanticipated outcome was we had a ton of new colleagues who became authors and were friends, and we became recognized education leaders. Nobody knew who Katie Huggett and I were before this book. And now all of a sudden people are calling us and asking us to be on panels and take part in AAMC sessions and write stuff with them. And so all of those new opportunities that happened. So that all just came from being bold, and why not me? And similar opportunities will happen for all of you, and you may or may not recognize them when they come. That's why I'm always saying, say yes when you get the opportunity. So the second lesson is, how are we doing on time?
Late.
I'm late?
You're late.
How much time I got left?
2 minutes.
For the whole talk, 2 minutes? What, are you kidding me? I got another hour and a half. No. 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
All right. So, all right, well, there's Lynn Crespo. I will skip that one. Let's go to the big ones. Okay, so saying yes. I had a consulting gig as a result of these other things that happened. And I went to Kaiser Permanente to help start the new medical school as a consultant. And I met this gentleman while I was there. I didn't know him. And we had some talks. And I told him at the time that I thought that, since they had basically the same model as KP, why not have take advantage of some of the integrative aspects of the medical system and change the curriculum to be more active learning and more aligned and a whole new curriculum. And he said, yeah, that sounds great. I'll talk to Dr. Jobst about that. And basically, when we got, outcome was we got an accreditation analysis for KP, but the unanticipated one was not very long later, I got a call from Steve Scheinman to come here and help develop that curriculum and become the vice dean here. So that, again, new colleagues and opportunities, new curriculum, growth, satisfaction in my career. So that was very helpful. I'm going to do another one. I don't care what April says. Here's one, and maybe this is the second biggest one, actually. Cam Enerson gets a phone call. So I'm at Creighton University now, and I'm the assistant dean, or associate dean. And Cam Enerson gets a call from St. Joseph Hospital in Phoenix. And he says, okay, Bill, you don't have to do this, purely up to you, but Phoenix wants to start a new medical campus or St. Joe's wants to start a medical campus because the University of Arizona is spurning them as a sole partner, and they want to have a school that's a sole partner. And we're the only Catholic school, or the closest Catholic school to that Catholic hospital. And so I said, okay, we'll look at it. And Cam played very little role. He said, this is your thing. You just do it if you want to do it, but don't do it if you don't want to do it. So I said yes. Why not me? I'll do it. And I didn't know how to start a campus, but I faked it till I made it. And I worked with this guy, Charlie Doshbach, on the bottom. Maybe some of the older people in the room who are GRA people may know him. And we had the best time in the world. We developed new skills. We had career advancement. I became the senior associate dean at University of Vermont as a result of my starting this campus. New colleagues, new opportunities. It was so good. We had so much fun. And we started a campus there, a clinical campus. And the day that the campus was announced at Creighton was the day that I left. And I went to University of Vermont. But now, drum roll please, next slide, 12 years later, there's the Creighton University Health Sciences campus in Phoenix. And I was trying to see where, I was looking for the statue of me in there, but I can't see it. It's too small for the, but, so these things that you do, these minor things, those inflection points are something that really are important, and you really should try to accomplish or they say yes to. And that's the most important message that I have for you, is that you don't know what an important inflection point is in your life unless you say yes. So do that. But also, you're all teachers. And you are every day offering up inflection points for your learners. And I think that's hugely important. And remember that you are that person that is making a difference. And so even if you think, like I thought for a long time, okay, all these students that I've taught, these 12,000, whatever it is, students that I've taught, like what, they don't even remember me. It doesn't matter. But in fact, you don't know what inflection you created, but by giving yourself and by giving yourself to a cause and a commitment, you are in fact allowing that possibility to happen and changing the lives of those folks. And I think that's the most important. Am I done? Okay. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. Oh, I don't want to show one slide though. Sorry, April. We'll skip over this part where we got $100 million for the University of Vermont, and I'll skip over the poem. But I just want to say this: the lesson of hanging out with smart people. Here's all the things that we've done since I've been here together as a group, and these smart people out here have helped accomplish all of these things. This is just the stuff on the degree granting side. And then hanging out with smart people as well. Whoops, where is it? There. She can't be here tonight, but this is my lovely wife, who I really miss her being here. But she had a procedure today at Woodbine, and she's recovering over at the Pine Barn. But I want to make sure that everyone also understands that these folks in your life are the most important thing. So thank you.